Welcome everybody to another episode of UFO Man Live featuring Tommy Highway and Thomas. Introduce yourself, Tommy.
Hi folks, I'm Tommy Highway. I'm a ufologist and network engineer, former government employee. Very happy to be here, and as always, thank you for coming. And Tim, my brother, thank you for having me.
More than welcome. Thomas, introduce yourself.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Thomas FESSLER. I'm a ufologist, ancient alien theorist, advocating for disclosure. I'm a practicing remote viewer. I practice in non-local consciousness and vibratory spirituality. I also dabble a little bit in plasma cosmology. So good to be here tonight, guys. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
You're more than welcome. Tonight we're talking about a lot of different subjects, but we're going to start out with our weekly UFO video review. But tonight, instead of playing sound, we're not going to play the sound, and we're just going to let you see the video, and we're going to talk about it and reply to comments in the chat. So here we go. First one. This is Awesome Lights over Laguna Niguel, California. Take a look. Is the volume off?
Yeah, it is.
That's okay.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, this one looked cool because he had this pattern of all of these different lights kind of shimmering there in location. What do you think, Tommy?
I wonder, these are one of those things that I want to know what's behind it. I want to know what's there during the daytime, but that's very unique. That's like a column of lighted dots. You don't really see that even on a tower, like a radio tower or something. You don't generally see that sort of thing. That's very different.
Yeah, there were 10 to begin with, and now there are 7.
We're not talking not flares, obviously not swamp gas, so threw those out.
Yeah. Well, could it be flares? Because they are kind of there going in place. Are they moving downward at all, Tim?
They're not.
No, he says very little movement.
You don't see the plume of smoke from a flare, from a magnesium flare either.
Yeah, that's true. It is clear around them.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll stop it when he clears it up. Right there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lights.
At least.
And, well, that are visible. And then later there are 7. Now, you can see that the lights are extremely bright. There's pixelization around the lights, but I don't see any plumes.
No, and it does look like some of the lights, like there's some depth going on where they're not all on the same level.
Agreed. And if they were in fact a flare, they would be ascending to the ground, descending, I should say, to the ground.
Yeah,
they're just hanging there.
Yeah, and you can kind of see a tree line that they're above.
Yep, sure can. Yeah, those aren't moving. They're stationary. That's
yeah. Pause that there for a second, Tim. I see multiple triangular shapes within there in some of the configurations. You've got a triangle on the bottom.
There's a triangle right there.
Right.
A dark shape.
You have 2 above it.
There's one there.
You have that triangle. Now you have 2 below it, and then there's a triangle on the bottom.
There's one up top. Yep.
Digital cameras are great, but you got to just miss 35 millimeter for certain things, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was done with a cell phone camera. He even said that he regretted taking it with a cell phone, but he had no other choice. It was either film it or lose it.
Go with what you got. Go with what's in your pocket. It's better than nothing.
Okay, the next one is a flaming red oval UFO over the United States. I never found out where this was exactly, but it is over the United States, and it's kind of interesting due to the color.
What?
Yeah.
I will zoom in so you can see it clearer.
Not lightning, not a weather phenomenon of any kind.
Yeah, it's hard to know if that's the shape of the actual object. I mean, it is kind of in that shape, but a lot of it we're seeing is distortion because it's well beyond what the camera can handle. You've seen it a lot in a lot of UFOs when you zoom in close. You just get that kind of a
Plus,
shape.
Thomas, didn't you say something about the gravitational shift is causing the red color?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, exactly. Red would be caused by a gravitational shift. So whatever is going and doing that, it's clearly it's an anti-gravity, some kind of craft.
That's not a beacon. That's not something on top of a tower. It's all the wrong color. Even with that digital camera with its CCX or CCD processor messing things up like they tend to do, even then, that's not something that you would normally see in the skyline.
No. Right. I have no idea what this is, but the color intrigued me because you don't see too many oval red UFOs. Sometimes you see red orbs, but you don't see anything oval shaped.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting, I thought. Okay. Next one. This is a massive illuminated cylinder with flashing lights seen over Saskatchewan, Canada. This one's very interesting. Okay, you can't see it at first, but you will. Just wait a second here. Here it comes. It'll get bigger. Yeah, man. When it gets really big, it's got flashing lights on it.
What the hell is that? Well, you're not looking at a vapor trail. That's not what we're looking at here.
It's holding a consistent angle. It's not like it's going back or forth in any kind of direction.
Not blowing with the wind or the air current.
Right.
Kind. Agreed. I don't think it's a camera anomaly either, because look at that. There's a camera anomaly. You see that?
Yeah,
it's a camera anomaly.
That passed by, but look at the lights cycling back and forth on the cylinder.
Yeah. That's something.
Yeah.
You know what almost reminds me? I guess we just recently saw that one cylinder that was long that had those blinking lights kind of going along it. Where was it at the East Coast or something?
Yeah, that white thing right there is not a UFO. That's a plane.
Yeah.
There's just no atmospheric phenomenon that I can actually associate that with.
Yeah.
Not that I'm an expert, but I mean, damn, I'm a human. I've been looking at the sky for a long time. I've never seen anything like that.
See the light flash in the middle?
Yeah, but it's kind of going around. It almost looks like
it could almost be a huge disc, but
bingo. And we're just seeing the edge of it rotating, going around.
And unfortunately, we're way out of the range of this camera's optical abilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, exactly.
It's catching the very tail of what we can catch here. Mm-hmm.
This is really
folks, don't let that discourage you. Your camera in your pocket is your best friend when it comes to UFOs. And I'll tell you, Tim, Thomas, and we all talked about this. Guys, send in the things that you see. Please go ahead and shoot it over to UFO Man. Alert us that you've got something. We want to see it, man. We really do.
We have the email that you can send it to in the summary below every video.
Please do.
Okay, next video. All right, the next one is a fast UFO captured on film over Gwarapur, India.
Gwarapur. What are you? Last time I saw one of those, it was moving a whole lot faster. But yeah, I know that. I know that craft. I know exactly what that is. Yep.
It's similar to what I had over my house back in November of last year. It's just a slow moving orange orb just kind of going across, and mine just freaking shot off in another direction, and it was gone.
One of the stories in my book, Strange Tales from the Highway, is about two of these objects that streaked in and pulled up next to a much larger object that was clearly in distress, and they repaired it right in front of my eyes. I'm telling you.
There's a close-up of it, and it almost looks like the sun.
That's him. That's him. I know that craft. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know what the camera's hiding behind the orange orb, but I've seen this orb too, many times.
It's a common whatever that is. Their craft or whatever. That's a common one because I mean, everybody, like you said, everybody else has seen it, and I've seen it too. Definitely seen it.
Yeah, that was over India, which is very interesting. And I thought it was really close. That's why I put it out on the channel.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, this is an odd vehicle. I don't know if this is a UFO, an alien reproduction vehicle, or a military class drone. But check this out.
Contrails, so that tells me that it has some sort of terrestrial propulsion system on board, because if you ever notice UFOs, they never leave a contrail because they're not burning fuel, they're not collecting vapor, things of that nature.
Although I have seen UFOs, actual disc craft with a contrail behind them that may or may not be alien made, but alien reproduction vehicles using some type of different propulsion. Now, this one only has a singular contrail behind it, which makes it unique.
Well, now hang on a second. You don't necessarily know that. It looks at the angle that we're looking at it. I mean, don't get me wrong, not to contradict you, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it depends on the angle you're looking at. If you're looking at a four-engine jet, let's say, leaving a contrail, and you look at that at the right angle, you're only going to see one contrail.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. But just to say, though, if I could really quick, there have been shots on Google Earth of contrails that have gone from the South Pole to the North Pole, and they have the same level of density and everything that's going along with it, which means these things have got to be moving, 12,500 plus miles an hour, maybe faster to be able to have that. So it's all fading at the same amount. Now, who knows what this is, but if something has some kind of strong gravitational propulsion around it, and it is changing the pressure around the object and changing the temperature potentially, there is depending on air conditions where it is, if there was high moisture, depending on if it was cold enough, it could potentially leave something behind it.
That's a pretty strong I agree with you, but that's a pretty strong looking contrail.
Yeah.
Like, I personally think that what we're seeing here is a camera trying to figure out what it's looking at. And that long contrail that we see behind it, we're probably looking at a multi-engine jet at the wrong angle. Just my opinion.
I will show you a close-up of it here in a second.
I would have liked to see going far back how the contrail is holding up, so that would give you an idea of how fast this thing is really moving.
Agreed.
Although with the way they're spraying the sky lately, you don't know if it's going to dissipate or not.
Well, when you're talking about upper atmospheric weather, it's pretty constant. I mean, it's...
Okay, well, this is the shape that the camera's seeing. And then there's a farther away shot. I couldn't get the tail end of the jet stream because that's not what I received in footage.
It's just not there. Yeah.
No. But it's odd because of the shape that is there. Now, if it's a jet, in most cases, I can tell when it's a jet. If it's that close, you can see a jet. Unless it's a really poor camera, and it's doing that. I don't know what to say about it. I still say it's unidentified. Whether it's an alien vehicle or not, I'm not going to say that. I am leaning toward a military drone or an alien reproduction vehicle, which is man-made. That's what I'm leaning toward. Okay.
It's a big question mark for me because it is identified. There's nothing to really lock it down. I'll just leave it as an unidentified flying object.
Yeah, unidentified, exactly, in the technical sense of the word. Here is a huge sphere UFO with blinking white lights and a black energy field over Italy. Now I will get closer.
Yeah, I remember this one. This one's kind of really interesting, especially when you look at the bottom of it when it does a close up.
That's just hanging there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're right. There's a shadow on the bottom.
Yeah, and the shadow, you know, almost looks like it's a flat on the bottom in some respects. It doesn't look like it's a rounded object.
Although when you see it close up, sometimes it looks round.
Tic Tac.
Depending on the angle that it's pointing, if you're seeing it from the front, because that shadow almost looks like it has a perspective going back where it's getting narrower as it's farther.
I agree. Yep, you're right. We're looking at it's facing us. It's facing the camera. Yeah, you're right.
And it's got some depth to it.
Wait till you see the white light on top and the white light on bottom.
This is where my experience in making 8-bit video games and 16-bit video games, when you're trying to represent something in the least amount of pixels.
Well, the camera zoomed way out. The camera it's extended way beyond its range, and it's just trying to interpret what it can actually create as a visual image. But it's a pretty good one, and I agree with Thomas that there's definitely a shadow on the bottom.
And there is a flash going on the bottom. Scratch is saying it could be a blimp head on.
Maybe, but I mean, what blimp is white like that?
I would rule out a blimp because blimps have cupolas and they have tail fins.
Yeah.
And you don't see either one.
And they tend to move ever so slowly, but they're moving. This thing looks like it's sitting right there to me.
Yeah, it's just sitting still. The movement you see is from the camera. Now, there is an enlargement showing the darkness that's around the outside of it.
There could be more there than we're actually seeing, actually.
Oh, of course. The camera, like you said, is extended way beyond its capabilities, but that's the best that we could find with it. And Renee says it's UFO blue. Yes, I agree.
And for everyone who's watching, please feel free to go ahead and throw your comments into the chat of what you think of what we're looking at as we're going along, and we'll read them back as well. It'd be great to hear what you guys think.
We'll highlight them up on the channel. Okay. This is the Channel Islands, United Kingdom cylinder or rectangle UFO caught on film recently. Check this out. Now I will zoom in so you guys can see it closer.
Sitting right there, hovering, big as life. Look at that thing.
Yep. It's not moving at all.
Nope.
Or is it?
No, it's moving a little bit.
Yeah.
But not with the wind. Look at the current. Look at the current. Look how that's blowing the waves, and watch that thing move. This is not a balloon, folks.
Yeah, the thing is moving toward the right, and the current is blowing to the left.
Absolutely directly left. You bet.
Right. But vertically, it's locked in place. It's only moving on a perfect freaking plane off in one direction.
I see it moving, slightly moving, but you're right. It's not in a hurry to go anywhere, and it's definitely going against the wind. No question.
Yeah. So whatever it is, it's flat. There's not a lot of depth, height to it.
Right there. Now I'm going to stop it. If you look at it here, it has a squared off edge.
Yeah, that dip that you always talk about in those cylinders, it's got that in front and got that weird thing on top.
It's either a cylinder or it's a flat rectangle.
Yeah. But a lot of cylinders you see do have kind of flat ends on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the ones that don't, I'm just going to go with rectangle or cylinder, either one. It could be either one. Yep.
I'm going with cylinder with that notch cut in it, and we're seeing something in the back of it that could be some kind of a raised up.
Yeah, I see that there too. I don't know what that is.
That could be the camera, the angle. That could be a lot of things, but we've seen the cylinders before with that notch in them. Usually it's in the back.
Right.
But who's to say these things can't move backwards? I mean, I'm sure they can.
Yeah, any direction. But I'm on board with you, Tommy. Mm-hmm. Good assessment.
Thank you.
Well, everybody seems to be liking it.
Yeah, Rene thinks it's a UFO battleship. Scratch says it's a submarine.
Could be.
Yeah.
Don't know. I do know that they have put anti-gravitational devices on old attack submarines.
Yeah.
For the secret space program. At least that's the theory going around the ufology circles.
Yeah. And I guess it could be shaped like a lingam as well, but just horizontal.
Anything that can actually withstand down pressure usually can withstand out pressure too. So for submarines, I mean, that's what they do. So, I mean, that makes sense that there's something to that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Ginormous flying Comcast cable box, LOL.
Yeah, but if that was, you'd be getting better internet. It's a thing.
Yeah, we all would, yeah.
Oh, but they figured out how to charge us more for it.
Yeah, I know, right?
Okay, here's a multicolored UFO over Venezuela, and it was completely silent.
Well, it's just sitting there. It's not going anywhere.
It's got your typical, what do you call it? Color cycling that you'll see in electronic products, kind of, where you're going through between all the different colors of the rainbow.
Although, and we talked about this earlier, Thomas, we were thinking that if this were a very large drone with multiple colored lights, that might be a possibility.
Right.
Although, and the reason why I thought it might be a drone is because the top two lights stay in the same position. They don't move. They just change color. Now, here are some still shots. Well, that one moved.
Let's go through the usual excuse me, questions. Okay. Does it have running lights on it like the red and blue red and green running lights like an American aircraft would? No.
No.
We're not seeing that. Now, does it have shape, a normal shape that we can recognize? No, it doesn't. So then that leaves us to the question of, have we ever seen anything like this before in the sky?
No.
So either this is something new, and it could very well be a drone. We've seen drones do some things that fooled me. I'm here to tell you.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, this is one of those definite maybes. I mean,
yep.
If those are drones, they're hanging awful steady in the air.
Yep.
Yes.
Which means it must be a real still night because 300 feet up. I mean, the wind current changes dramatically. Everybody that flies a drone knows that. I don't know. Definite maybe.
Yeah. It's just the coloration of the lights that got me thinking.
Yeah, and honestly, the coloration, the cycle it goes through almost matches what my RAM does right now. That's the only reason. It's just has a bunch of different colors that I've never seen before in a UFO.
The colors do seem more terrestrial, I think.
I've seen some of those colors in UFOs. The only ones I had not seen were purple and pink side by side. That's the only thing I've never seen in a UFO. Now, I've seen a pink UFO, but I've never seen purple with pink. That's just different.
But then again, we're also at the mercy of the sensor on the camera, too. So who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what we're looking at here.
Okay, here's the last video of the UFO video review on UFO Man for this week. Here we go. It is an awesome flashing multicolored string of lights over the Netherlands.
Now, one of the things I have to say is the lights that are going, we can't tell if there really is a pattern or there isn't a pattern. And honestly, you'd have to go ahead and take a high frame rate recording of it and just, log out at every frame as you're going along. What is the configuration of lights? And then if you went to that amount of detail, you'd be able to go through and identify, is there a pattern? Are they trying to say something? Is that what's kind of going on with it? Because the way the lights are going, it could be like a Morse code kind of a thing, or just engines firing.
Are we looking at a Cessna or a drone or something pulling a string of lights behind it?
Yeah, there's the large version of it.
Have you ever?
I don't know if it's a Cessna. I see what you mean. You're talking about this,
right? Pulling a string of lights behind it.
I don't know, but I would almost say no, because the string of lights behind it are awful straight. And when a jet has the wash from their jet engines.
Well, we're not talking jet. We're
talking a Cessna pulling behind it, but yeah,
very small plane, and that probably wouldn't make a lot of wake, I don't think, behind it. But I mean, you may be right. I'm just saying that, to me, I've been living in Florida for 10 years. I've seen Cessnas pull some pretty crazy stuff in the sky
at nighttime.
At nighttime, yeah, over the beach, you betcha. Advertisements and whatnot, yeah, all the time.
Well, it could be, but I would think there'd be a little movement in the line of lights, whereas in this, there's absolutely no movement other than the flashing.
I agree.
I mean,
and if it's just hanging there, then it's obviously not a Cessna. I'm just trying to figure out if.
Yeah, it's just hanging there.
It's just hanging there, then yeah, planes have to fly.
There's no vertical movement or anything. Those things are just locked in place.
Yeah.
Definite maybe.
Okay, thank you to everyone in the chat room and participating online for watching the UFO video review. The next segment, hold on a second here. The next segment, I gotta do this here, will be presented by Thomas FESSLER. Thomas, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. All right. So in last week's episode of talking about UAPs, we were talking about the characteristics of UAPs, and we talked about that they should be round or geometrical, that they move very quietly or silently, etc. And we covered a really good in-depth overview of the top level things that makes a UAP a UAP. Today, we're going to go ahead and talk about some just observations and verification of video that I've got up on the screen behind me, and different visual phenomena that we see when we're looking at a UFO that'll help us as we go along and look at more UFOs to better understand what we're looking at. So the first piece when we're looking at a UFOs, because a UFO has a gravitational field around them, is we're going to get an effect of duplication. Now, in order to navigate, the UAP needs to change the geometry of the distortion field around it thus changing its gravitational lens. If you remember, a gravitational lens is like what you get from a black hole, where the overall gravity is bent around an object and you're not really getting a true representation of the visual of what you're looking at. This causes light from the UAP to be lensed towards or away from the camera in different ways, changing the apparent shape of the UAP. So if we look at the different examples we've got going above right here, when a UAP accelerates towards the camera, either by turning or decelerating when facing in the opposite direction, the distortion field changes the lens, the lens's light in this direction. In order for the UAP to accelerate towards the camera, it has to create a gravitational downhill in that direction. So we're talking about a UAP basically taking the gravity, bending it downwards in front of it. So as the UAP moves, it's always in a falling manner. And this is where the light gets lensed to, which coincides with such a mirage. So we basically have the UAP going and getting duplicate versions of it showing up as it's kind of moving along. It's kind of really cool effects. Now, when there's opposite accelerations, the UAP also appears to shrink and disappear, which coincides with opposite accelerations, meaning going away from particularly where the camera is. So if we had a camera on opposite sides of the UAP, we would see a mirage in one camera and invisibility in the other. Visibility. Because the light from the invisible side is the light we see on the side featuring the mirage. So basically, because the way it's lensing the gravity, it's not reflecting back in one direction, but you are seeing it from the opposite direction. So the light we are missing on one side is the extra light we're getting on the other. Interesting. So it's even going and amplifying the image, because it's like you're almost seeing two copies of the image from both sides at the same time. As the UAP changes its flight path, the distortion field shifts. And as we see into a direction where another view of the UAP gets lensed into that camera direction. So if you can see right up in here, you're seeing an overall duplication of the image as it moves across and up and down and out, and then it comes back together. So that's sometimes where we're seeing one UFO that looks like two, but it's actually just one UFO based on how we're looking at it through a gravitational lens. Can you see the mirage appear in the original shape? It's kind of cool. Here we are seeing two visions of the same UAP in a double vision. Watch how the mirage on the top swallows and replaces the original and apparent shape on the bottom. So as it's kind of coming up, you're going to see it split apart into two, and then the two shapes come back together. Again, kind of like we're seeing UAPs that split apart or come back together again. The UAP decelerates and turns due east when this happens, changing the distortion field as expected.
What if that thing is actually shaped like a split shot sinker? Let's say, you know what I'm talking about, a wide open split shot sinker, like a fishing sinker, and it's just turning, and we're seeing both halves of it. But I see what you're saying. I mean, when it goes through that cloud right there, it's almost like it's reflecting off it.
In this footage, the Puerto Rico police FLIR video of the object flying over land and over sea, it is being, what you're saying is indicated. But like Tommy said, you may have different circumstances where it's not going to apply.
It's like it's turning. If you look at, when you see two pieces of it, it's turning. It looks like it's actually turning to this dorsal side.
Right.
You're seeing those, then it goes back, and then we see one object again. I almost wonder if it's like I say, a split shot sinker kind of a shape.
But they've got 1:33 of this video. So all the analysis we're going after is going through is basically a team who's gone and looked at every single frame of the video. They've got an idea of what the shape of the ship is, and then they're able to take that knowledge and then try to understand what the gravitational field is doing to go ahead and take that image and distort in that manner.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The next one is where the original, you can see that there's one shape that as it's moving, there's another shape that comes in and replaces it. So it's clearly an optical effect of what's going on from the overall ship. And now that's one of the things we could be looking at too. A lot of times when we're seeing orbs and we're seeing that glow could be caused by the gravitational field around the object, and it's maybe not an orb on the inside.
Right. That's why I said with that bright orange one we watched a little while ago that we couldn't tell exactly what was in that glow.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The next piece we're going to take a look at is invisibility. We just mentioned about that a little bit earlier. In multiple examples in the video, we can see the UAP shrinking to 5% of its original mass or disappearing altogether for 1 or 2 frames. Then the UAP suddenly reappears when its trajectory and level is leveled out again. So this is really indicative of space-time distortion that we're looking at. The shrinking seems to occur when the UAP moves in the opposite way of when it duplicates. When the UAP gets smaller or disappears, an observer on the opposite side would see a mirage that is where the missing light is going. For all instances where we see a mirage, an observer in the opposite side would see the UAP get smaller or disappear. This is exactly what is expected from a UAP with a propulsion system that distorts space-time. So you can see in these examples we've got going here in the first one, the UAP gets smaller and larger again as it's moving around, and that's as a result of its gravitational field. Not just on it moving farther in the distance or closer in the distance.
Kind of like that bottom middle footage.
There we go, yeah. Same as before is not as strong. Comparing this one to this one where a UAP disappears and reappears as it navigates. Right there.
Yep. Or the
Some
one
really
next
cool stuff. So that kind of ends this piece on UAP tech. There's a bunch more to come along with it, and this stuff is really kind of deep. And rather than just boring the tears out of you guys or just giving you too much information at once, we wanted to go ahead and just take this, one step at a time. So as we move along, the first thing we're going to talk about is there's been a bunch of press this week in the last week or so, talking about alleged UFO alloys that were housed in a secret Las Vegas warehouse. And these were declassifications and stories in the New York Times that were, identifying the warehouses of Bigelow Aerospace that were modified for, initially they said the storage of metamaterials.
Mm-hmm.
But then Bigelow, when he's talking with George Knapp, he goes and he talks about it. It's basically saying that it's, a space that you have to wear a spacesuit in. It has a completely alien atmosphere and nothing where any kind of a human could survive. So you just have to wonder, was it for materials or was it for something biological? Now, they didn't go into the biological side in the story, but for me, it's just a big question mark. Why would you have a facility like that makes you have to wear a spacesuit basically in order to survive, to go ahead and work with, with whatever's in there?
If it were a materials issue, I have to believe that if we have to create a certain environment around materials, those materials probably would have no longer exist because we didn't have the ability to create that environment for some years. Unless they just crashed, unless they crashed recently. We're talking about Roswell and the Mexico thing and all of that. So yeah, that makes sense. But geez, what an interesting story. Go ahead, Thomas. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So as we go along with this, in the discussion with Bigelow and Knapp, basically, if we want to call it, Knapp asked Bigelow, here we go. New York Times reported that you modified your facility in order to house some material from somewhere else. Did you ever have it? Knapp asked, and Bigelow simply responded, we never had any materials. Not saying he didn't have something else. Now, also, as part of this article, they were basically quoting Elizondo, who was talking about the same thing after everyone was reporting, saying, hey, Bigelow had this stuff Here's Elizondo saying the buildings were constructed to house material, meaning if Bigelow were to collect material, they would then be stored in the modified buildings. I never said he did indeed collect materials for the AAWSAP. As I've always stated, I was a part of AATIP. Now, the AAWSAP was the Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application Program, a program that, according to Elizondo, differs from the AATIP where he was at. So again, some interesting information. We have Elizondo now coming out, in addition to what Bigelow just said, saying, hey, Bigelow wasn't involved, didn't have everything. Now, going back to the original article that was reported on earlier in the week, where they said, hey, this was what was reported back in 2017, the New York Times, actually, they reached out to the journalists, and they basically came back and said, you mischaracterized what we said. We did not write that Bigelow had collected material through AAWSAP or that Bigelow ever had material at all. So there we go again. From the actual reporters, everyone is lining up and basically saying that there were no materials and everything. Now, as the story continues on from the debrief, they basically get into it and they say, well, yeah, there was some declassifications for some UFO material that was found. And there was a document that was released in 1997, an FOIA from the Army that basically was material from an alleged flying saucer in Denmark. Cool. So there are documents out there, and there is another one from 1966 we'll report on in a future live stream that details additional materials that the government has been involved with. Now, what's cool, going back to Roswell, I think just Tommy mentioned that a minute ago, was that back in 1991, this is a story about memory metals files that are missing. This is a story back from 2009, but it's really relevant that we're talking about materials from UFOs. And this is a story that I've never heard about, talking about a retired lieutenant colonel who basically was saying that he was a retired brigadier general, Arthur Exon, confirmed that the Roswell debris was transferred to Wright Field in 1947. Civilians and military personnel who handled the stuff compared some components to aluminum foil, except that it would conform to its original shape after being crumpled. You know, this is the same story even today. We're still hearing about that material. Exxon Lieutenant Colonel on base at the time said that lab chiefs in charge of testing material knew they had something new in their hands, although Exxon never had access to the debris. But who did? Through additional research, and it was identified through a WPAFB contract with Battelle in 1949. So, Battelle, 1949. Who is Battelle? Well, if we look at Battelle, they were founded initially in 1938, and they're basically they have been about collaborating a rich history of translating scientific discovery and technological advances into societal benefits.
So exactly who you would actually provide this material to is who these people are.
Now, one of the things that they claimed in part of the piece was the bending metal that we have in our glasses and stuff, like they're using liquid metal up for NASA and for like cooling on your CPUs and everything like that. Mm-hmm. That came out of this, and there's more. Battelle themselves is a corporation. They provide information on government, where they're they have threat assessment. What's a threat? Isn't the threat identification program about UFOs? The threat detection and identification. They handle energy. For instance, for the longest time, they've been managed the Hanford nuclear site in eastern Washington. They also operate all the a bunch of the national labs across the United States that we're familiar with, including Brookhaven, Oak Ridge, and of course, Los Alamos. You guys heard about Los Alamos, Tommy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Thomas, go under lab management.
Sure. Let me go under, not under lab management, but I do have information. I'm not showing the website. I'm showing screenshots right now.
Okay.
Do you want me to bring up the site?
No. Advanced materials under commercial
Yeah. So
offerings.
under commercial offerings, Tim pointed this out earlier today, that under industry solutions, they have advanced materials. Now, if we take a look at what they're talking about under advanced materials, sorry about that. That went the wrong way. I need to scroll it. Oh, no. Battelle is developing a new generation of advanced materials that are stronger, lighter, cleaner, cheaper, and more sustainable. Whether it's new products or enhanced functionality for specialty equipment, our advanced material solutions are made easy to apply, implement, and deploy to all corners of the globe, from bio-based materials to functional surfaces, and from nanotechnology to power storage. We deliver a competitive advantage. Now, Tim, didn't you point out bio-based materials?
Yeah, bio-based materials, which would be considered like biological vehicles, and the coverings that they're working on, the functional surfaces, could be for like aerospace advancements in like stealth fighters.
Absolutely.
I did have something to add here. I've also been reading about the materials article all week. One of the things I found very interesting about that is that, as it happens, although I'm an IT engineer, my very first job was in a weld shop. These guys were really a high-end weld shop. And when they say that this memory material is made of high-end titanium and nickel, I guess my question as a amateur metallurgist is, what do you mean by high-end titanium? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Pure titanium? No such thing. So what do they mean exactly?
It's got to be something with the preparation and just manufacturing process and how they're going and taking the material and getting it to a particular state.
They're probably 3D printing these things, at least in our limited understanding of what that is. And that's been said before. Bob Lazar brought that up, that, these things look like they've been almost 3D printed. They're seamless. So
yeah,
we can't do that.
Yeah, so Battelle is a really interesting company. They have a lot of links back to a lot of, if you want to call, they may be the ones who have been in the Black Ops projects, investigating a lot of the UFO stuff. We've got someone who we may be bringing on in the future to go ahead and talk more on Battelle, rather than us going ahead and trying to bring on and be a specialist on it. We've identified someone who could, carry the torch a heck of a lot better than all three of us. So if we go on to the next...
Thomas, wait a minute. Red Panda in the chat is saying, so is the nitinol a real material? And according to our research, yes.
Yeah, but it's man-made.
Yeah, it's
terrestrial materials built on things or created out of things that we actually have here on the planet.
Right.
That's why I'm a little sketchy on that whole Battelle or that whole type of metal that they're talking about. I mean, to me, I think Thomas has got a really great point here, is that not real sure yet on this one.
Right. But we're just noting that there are companies out there that are working with technology that has been gleaned from several UFO crashes, and they're trying to reproduce the metamaterials or the metals.
Anyone that's ever worked in the military or worked in the government or even been close to the government knows something right off the bat. The government doesn't know jack. What they do is they're going to take this material, these discoveries, and they're going to send them to a private sector company somewhere, contract them to do the research. That's how we do this.
Someone like Battelle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
perfect. Exactly.
Yeah, and again, although this is old news, I mean, we all love to follow the trail of Roswell. And this just seems so much evident about them talking about the materials that were in possession and where they went to, and give us another stone to go ahead and look underneath for the future.
Right. Bob Gray says the teardrop metal was dropped from a UFO.
Oh, I've seen materials dumped out of a UFO before. I've seen this happen.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I can't promise that they hit the ground. Whatever I saw probably burned up as it was on its way down. I don't know that, but you better believe they do. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a UFO around Christmas or New Year's, Tim, in New York that was like the saucer going and dropping stuff?
Yeah, it was dropping stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couple of them.
Yep. It just came to mind when we we're talking about that.
It's quite common occurrence. It's like they're getting rid of waste or something from their propulsion.
Expelling waste is my thought. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In if you want to call it our next piece, we're just basically going and doing a quick review of just a story that kind of hit on Twitter about the Navy refuses FOIA request access to 4 UAP task force records. Now, we've heard a lot about different, FOIA requests going and being granted. This is just a quick one about ones that are being denied. So as a result of a FOIA, the Navy revealed that it had identified 4 records that are responsive to your request. The letter then went on to state that the reason for its denial: it has been determined that these records are properly classified under Section 1.4 of Executive Order 13526 and are exempt from disclosure under 5 United States Code and 552B, paragraph 1.
And we're going to see we're going to see that through this whole 180-day program that they have. I guarantee we're going to see the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to get what everybody's expecting.
Yeah.
No.
And everyone's going to get a lot of letters like this. Is this basically say this is in reference to your Freedom of Information Act, blah 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 blah. Basically, your request is denied. Sincerely, Deputy Director, and someone's name. So
very politely, go F yourself is what they're saying.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, back to you, Tim.
Okay. The next segment tonight is a short lecture. It's about 20 minutes long. So if you want to get some beverages or something to eat and sit back and relax, we're going to talk about the Atacama Humanoid Cover Up. And we're also going to talk about the truth about the TTSA and Luis Elizondo and some of his cohorts. Now, this lecture was done by Dr. Stephen Greer, and even if you don't like the man, it seems to be that he's imparting a lot of interesting information. So let me set this up, and we will take a look.
And if you can get me off full screen, Tim, that'd be great.
Yeah, a second there, Thomas.
But Thomas, you're so pretty. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I've spent so much time on this camera getting it right.
Oops, now I got to go back.
But thank you, Tommy.
I'm going to put you there again, Thomas. They need to make the audio button default.
Keep on sending them tech support messages.
I've done that a lot, let me tell you. Okay, here we go.
Julie. Hey, Jules.
Because it turns out there's not just one of these, but there are at least 2. And I just got a report from Chile last night that multiple of these small creatures have been seen live and living in these foothills of the Andes in the Atacama region. The Atacama skeleton was found in this area of Chile. It is about 6 inches. I found it first saw it, I should say, in 2009. I didn't discover it, nor did I take it out of Chile, regardless of what the New York Times has been alleging. In reality, a treasure hunter found it in an old ruins of an Indian village in the foothills of the Atacama region in this area of Chile. Now, this is an area that the native peoples had reported seeing small people, which they call the Gentiles. It's an interesting term they use for them, for centuries and perhaps millennia. And it had also been associated with seeing UFOs. It was actually taken in the area right over where this Atacama skeleton was found. And there are very unusual objects that are seen going in and out of the Andes that are luminous, partially materialized objects, sometimes fully materialized. And the report I received last night from a researcher who I have credit this photograph and a lot of this information to, Alex Chianetti, thank you, is that there are reports of these being seen recently by people in that area as living organisms. And the one that I want to show you next, this is the one that is in the possession of a man in Barcelona. And he was a man who went to Chile, met the treasure hunter who had been sifting through these old ruins from the late 1800s, early 1900s in mining towns, looking for treasures, basically, old artifacts. And in a pouch, in one of them, someone had preserved and saved this. Now, I first learned of this in 2009. It was found in 2003. And the public knew some of the information on it beginning in 2004 and 5. Some studies were done in Europe showing that it was in fact a not human. The anthropologists had found that there was wear on some of the connective tissue still remaining on the feet, that it had walked around, et cetera, and so on. However, no thorough genetic testing had been done, because to do the genetic testing requires damaging this very unusual skeleton. I was invited first just to view it. And when I first saw it, I put it in my hand, and I have big hands. Size 9 surgical gloves. Anyway, so, and it was 6 inches. It did not take up my whole hand. And I looked at this, and I knew immediately that this was not a model or a fake or what have you. I knew that this was an actual, had been a living organism. And so we examined it, looked at it, photographed it, made a connection with Ramon in Barcelona, who owned it, and we kept the dialogue going. In 2012, I was able to convince him to allow us to come over with a technical and sort of surgical team and take samples of the bone and be able to get bone marrow that could then be extracted and run through some genetic tests to see if it matches or didn't match to any known species on Earth. Now, during that time, we got a bunch of x-rays and CAT scans, and you'll see that it has a very different appearance to a fetus or a newborn baby. And if you look carefully at this, you'll also see that on a newborn and a fetus, the bones are very, very thin. They're rubbery. This is the knee on the Atacama humanoid. We'll get into this. And what you'll also find is that the skull has 4 bones, and we have 6. The Atacama has 10, we have 12, etc. It's grossly, obviously different from a human. Now, the question was, then what is it? We do not know what this is. But the hatchet job done at Stanford and UCSF and Genome Research Magazine, which is atrocious on this study, is going to get exposed very quickly. And this is me holding up the skeleton. And when you see it, look at the extent of the calcification and how opaque it is. The amount of calcium in those bones is consistent with a small child. Because when you're in utero, there is not much calcium in those bones. They're very cartilaginous, meaning like cartilage. This is why newborn babies, I'm a trauma doctor, when there's a terrible accident, they're amazing. They're like Gumby bears. They can move and do this, and they don't have a broken bone. Why? Because they don't have a high degree of calcification, which you have as you get older. And there are a lot of technical reasons for this, having to do with osteoblasts and things that will put the general audience to sleep. I will not go into. But it's important to note that. And the very first thing, the radiologist in Barcelona, when we pulled this off the x-ray machine and out of the CAT scanner, they all went, oh, my God, this is not a fetus. They had assumed this little thing had to be an ejected or aborted fetus, 22 weeks, 28 weeks. They said, this was a child, and it was up running around. It had epiphyseal plates. What are epiphyseal plates? Epiphyseal plates are where the long bones, and you'll see that there's a place, what's called a growth plate. And you know, when you're growing, the bones have to grow because there's a growth plate in the long bones that allows them to continue to grow and lay down new bone and get longer and longer as we get taller and taller as we reach our full mature height. Those epiphyseal plates are consistent with a 6 to 8 year old human child in terms of developmental stage. There is another one. Look at the skull and look at the overlapping helmet-like feature. If you look at the skull sutures and the way a large skull bone comes over to like a point and overlaps, it's identical to the Atacama skeleton. This is from Russia from 1996. A separate small being that was found running around that a woman captured, unfortunately kept it in captivity, tried to feed it yogurt. It died and was subsequently autopsied. I understand that it was later confiscated by some authorities after initial tests had been done. It's bigger. This is an adult. Skull is the same essentially as the Atacama. Now, what's important about that is that if there are two of these, it rules out a singular genetic mutation of a human embryo. There's no way. It isn't going to happen. Be 1 in a quadrillion chances. Interestingly, it was the assistant of Dr. Gary Nolan at Stanford who had offered to do an honest examination of this genetically, who found this Russian being, and then I had another researcher send it to me. And I recalled that in 1996, when I was over in England, I was told about this, but by the time I wanted to go over to Russia to get it, it had been seized and it had vanished. We do not know where it is now. I've heard different stories of where it is. One account is that it was buried on the shore of the Black Sea, another is that it's in the KGB's or FSB's hands. We do not know. It's not available for examination, which means all we have are these images. Now, this means that with two of them, we really have a phenomenon of something that is a creature, that is a humanoid or human-like creature, not described in the medical literature or not described in the scientific literature anywhere. We knew we had something significant. I went and got the bone marrow in September, late September 2012. The DNA was handed off along with these images to Stanford and to Dr. Nolan in October of 2012. And then it seems everything fell apart. Now, you can read these for yourself, where he's basically saying that the chances this is a spontaneous chance mutation are infinitesimally small. And we had discussions where he said, essentially, we don't know what this is, but the chances it could be a mutation from just a singular event in a human embryo are infinitesimal. 1 month later, a $3.2 million grant award, the Teal Award, was granted to Nolan and his lab from the Department of Defense. I thought, well, you know, it's not proof of anything. It's worrisome because by the time he began to start running the genetic tests and workups, it seems that he had been told by someone to say it was a deformed human. And that's what you will read in the New York Times and on CNN and the BBC. The major news media, The View, were all contacting me to have interviews. Dr. Nolan went out to the public and stated, don't worry, it's a deformed human. Of course, I was shocked by this betrayal since the work had not been done properly yet. All the evidence has suggested it was not, and none of the mainstream media would cover this after that because case closed, it's a deformed human.
I reached out to Steve,
and not a Republican.
Actually, within about 10 or 15 minutes, I got an email reply back. And then we basically went through a little bit of a negotiation as to what terms would be under which I would analyze this. And one of the things that I promised him, that I would not come at this with a hyper-skeptical way of analyzing or looking at it and not throw out the baby with the bathwater the moment I found something that made it look like it was only human or was not anomalous in any way. And to this day, I'm not going to. So I'm not going to make a pronouncement of what this thing is. I'm going to give you enough data to make your own decisions.
Now, this is a year later. Meanwhile, at some point during this period, he hooks up with this group. Now, this is a man who stayed at my home. He was one of the lead men in the group, Blink 182. I sort of mentored him when he was a young man, teenager and older. Somewhere between the early 2000s and now, he got contacted by a number of people in the intelligence community, such as General McCaskill.
He's the rock star, right?
Podesta hack during the Trump-Clinton campaign, where he was getting information.
Blink 182 rock star, definitely.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base general about the subject. All of it tailor-made to make him make the assessment, have the assessment that there's an alien threat that we need to worry about. And what happened is that, like so many people who look into this subject, they get sucked into what I call the black hole of disinformation that has been pre-positioned out there, that if you look into the UFO subject and then the extraterrestrial subject, you will be pulled into what is 90+% pre-positioned intelligence community created disinformation designed to have people hate anything not human. He founded a group, which we'll go through just quickly, some of these gentlemen, and what you find is CIA, Jim Semivan, you Putoff.
He's a good guy, though.
I've known about Dr. Putoff for decades. He does zero-point energy research. He's worked for every three-letter agency. His closest friend told me personally that he knew we already had these technologies, but that if he were to bring them forward, he would be killed along with his family and children. And
wow.
But he is an operative for the intelligence community and also a physicist. Another one, Aerospace Division, Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works. This gentleman, who you've seen on the news with the December New York Times CNN release of gun camera footage, is a man described to me by my sources in the Pentagon and CIA as a master of counterintelligence. And as you all know now, he headed up this threat assessment division at the Pentagon dealing with UFOs. Now, this gentleman is in the circles that I'm connected to very much someone who they pick to go forward to provide counterintelligence and false information or partial information to the public. Chris Mellon, distant relative of Paul Mellon, who helped found the CIA with Alan Dulles. I'm good friends with one of his distant cousins, who was the son of Senator John Warner, a member of the Magic Committee, along with Bush Sr. and Dick Cheney and others. This gentleman recently wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post stating that the Pentagon ought to look into this subject, but he didn't understand why they weren't. Well, meanwhile, I know people who work in the Pentagon, in the Defense Intelligence Agency, and in every agency, in the sub-basement and other off-site locations that are reverse engineering extraterrestrial spacecraft that we have downed using electromagnetic weapons. And yet this man, who had been a senior official of the Pentagon, as well as on the staff of Senator John Warner, is writing op-ed pieces saying, well, we don't really know what this is. We'll call them UAPs, unexplained aerial phenomenon. Well, this is the new term instead of UFO, both of which are fake terms because they're not unidentified at all and they're not unexplained. They want you to believe it's unexplained and unidentified. It's not true. Mind control, using words to control how you think.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
Operation Mockingbird.
My friend, who assured me that he would do an impartial study on this Atacama skeleton, who is a senior tenured professor at Stanford University and holds the Harris Chair. It's a $10 million endowed chair at Stanford. And I have met Tristan Harris, who is very well known in the tech world. And Tristan Harris is someone who is very much aware of this subject. And we'll get into that in a moment. Let's go through the rest of these quickly. You can just see who, CIA, next. CIA, next. In the interest of time, we're not going to go through all these. Department of Defense, next. And on. And on.
Yeah.
And on.
Because they're going
Now,
in there,
what
still
worries
leveraging
you
their
about
links back to the organization.
Well, I heard as soon as this information came out in December, and it started being covered globally about this case off the California coast of jets with footage of a UFO zipping along and moving in a non-aerodynamic way. I was contacted by a source who's been with the CIA for 30, 40 years. And he sent me an email and he said to me, he said, this is the rat pack that has been running scams, I'm quoting from the email, on the public and the US government for decades. But we hope their force will soon dissipate. It was very cryptic. I knew, by the way, before that film footage in December that was on the New York Times and CNN and other world media, that that was coming out and that this group was facilitating that release. But behind the release isn't just the information, because the follow-on interviews that these people have done have all been about a threat. It's all within the context of a threat. Why? Because if there's a threat, it supports a military, industrial, international cabal who wants a bigger enemy than the Taliban and ISIS to fight.
And the threat is anything that we don't understand, apparently. Tim, you're muted. You're muted, Tim.
All the members he was talking about in reference to the Rat Pack are all members and active members of the TTSA. And even though Luis Elizondo and Chris Millen supposedly left the TTSA, they are still actively employed with the Department of Defense and the CIA. So if Luis Elizondo is truly a master of counterintelligence, what have we heard from him that is in all actuality the truth?
Well,
Can we believe him? That's what I ask.
Bob Lazar was the only person to ever leave the program and survive, in my opinion.
yeah. Well, the thing is, if it's truly counterintelligence, that means he's going and all the information that everyone is trying to bring to him now that he's in this position of what he's trying to do, that would mean that information is going back right to the government.
Right. Okay, we're moving on to our second video segment. This one is 16 minutes long. This is the premiere of Alien Girl 111, Episode 2 on UFO Man. Here we go.
Hey guys, it's me, Amy from Alien Girl 111, and I am the newest member of Team UFO Man, and I'm super excited and super stoked to be here to talk about all things that have been going on this week, especially when we have Elon Musk, who's on the Joe Rogan show, and he's talking about how he has no interest in aliens. He has no interest in UAPs, how he doesn't really know anything. Okay, first, we're going to dive into that for sure. So you definitely got to stick around. And also, the thing is when I do my little streams, I like to put in the description and the comments below the key points that I'm talking about. So if you don't want to hear about some of these subjects, you can just go down into the comments and click on the timestamps of the things that we are going to be talking about. We're also going to be talking about Perseverance landing, also, right? And then my other question for this week that I really have that keeps coming up is this changing the way we think about the UFO phenomenon? Is the Perseverance landing changing the public perception of aliens and extraterrestrials? And what does that actually mean? So we're going to talk about that as well. And then I also have some great polls I took from UFO Twitter. We know how much we get talky on UFO Twitter. And if you are not on UFO Twitter, I highly recommend you get on it. It's incredibly fun, especially if you're into everything UFOs. So
she's
let's
spot
jump
on there.
right into it. So first off, we've got Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk is going on the Joe Rogan show, and Joe Rogan's got some questions. And those questions include, what does he think about the New York Times information, right? The New York Times articles, the To the Stars Academy footage. He asks him that and asking questions and thinking what he thinks about these, like really delving in. And Elon says he doesn't know anything about it. Okay, guys, we can all agree that we know Elon Musk knows. He knows what's going on. He definitely checks things out. He definitely reads things. People talk to him about these things. It's like thinking that Robert Bigelow, isn't having UFO. I mean, really, Robert Bigelow is a contractor for the U.S. government, especially when it comes to things all alien. He was working under TTSA for the Bigelow Project, for the experiment of the UFO debris that they recently, released in the Pentagon via a FOIA request by Tony Bragalia. And you can check out his work about the debris at ufoexplorations.com. So to say that Elon doesn't know is absolutely ridiculous to me, because Elon Musk knows. And all we have to really do to back up this claim and to kind of give some validity with other things that have happened with him is let's just back up. Last time he was on the Joe Rogan show, dude got into a lot of trouble. Anybody remember that? Because everybody all over UFO Twitter is like, oh, he hates aliens, blah, blah, blah. But do we remember?
No, he was smoking marijuana, and that upset the Defense Department. Why?
Right.
He's a car maker. Come on.
Was on Joe Rogan. They smoked a joint. It's legal in California. Whatever you feel about weed, I don't know. Usually in the alien community, you've got a lot of advocates for marijuana. So he smoked a marijuana cigarette on his show, and it caused some serious issues. Mostly the SEC, right? The Exchange Commission. They were really pissed off at him because he smoked a joint. It messed with the stock for Tesla. He actually was in a situation where he was really stressed out. And I remember reading an article, I think it was in Time, where they interviewed him. And they said, well, do you really, this happened because he was on the Joe Rogan show. Why should we let you be the CEO of Tesla? They were going to take it away from him. So that's what the SEC was trying to do, because they had the idea that he wasn't this legitimate citizen because he smoked a joint on the Joe Rogan show. He got a lot of trouble for this. And I don't think we backtrack and look at what happened to him. So, right? Am I right? Am I crazy? He was on the Joe Rogan show He smoked a joint, and the next thing you know, the Exchange Commission wanted to take him off as CEO, and they had to make a vote and all this stuff. And it didn't happen. And I remember reading an article because apparently he was smoking marijuana, taking pills, you know, because he's crazy, man. Like he spends the night in the Tesla factory. I mean, I don't even know how he gets to these cool parties that he has to go to.
Because he got high, because he got high, because he got high.
Anyway, that's a weird back thought. But yeah, so you've got Elon, and he's talking about this. And in the Times article, they talked about how they said, well, what are we supposed to do? Why should we let someone like you, Elon, who smokes joints on the Joe Rogan show, why should we let you continue to be the Tesla CEO? And he basically was like, who else is going to be the CEO of Tesla other than me? Basically saying, how are you going to replace me? Who are you going to find to replace me, Elon Musk? And so that had become kind of a convo. And so he got in a lot of trouble. So however you look at it, my own personal opinion is that UFOs are bad for business. UFOs are bad for business. People don't want to touch it. If there's anything we know about what's going on with Avi Loeb, his whole agenda right now is just to take out the ridicule from it. Like, God forbid we even think about aliens on other planets. And I'm just so confused because I live in a super biased world, right, where obviously aliens exist. So I'm always trying to scout out the non-believers and see how it works. I know a lot of people who don't believe. I've hung out with fundamentalist Christians who've watched the Bob Lazar video with me from beginning to end. And, nonsense. Okay. And I think it's just that we fit our faith, our religion, and as things change, we learn how to refit our faith and our religion in association with science. God, if you believe in God, he gave us a brain to ask these questions. I don't think it's crazy for us to ask. So, I mean, that was pretty fundamental. I really liked what happened with that this week. And the other thing, hello there, Perseverance landed. Baby, did she. And I took some polls on UFO Twitter. So that I could show you guys what you all think. Because I'm blown away by UFO Twitter, guys. So I took some Twitter polls to see what everybody thought for this segment. I wanted to see what everybody thought about everything going on with Twitter and with the Mars polls, with the Perseverance landing, and what they think about my polls about Mars. I'm really into these Twitter polls. I love waking up and thinking, like, what can I ask Twitter about UFO? What does hashtag UFO Twitter think? So here's what they think about the rover this week. And one of the questions I asked was, anyone else geeking out before the Perseverance Mars rover lands? I feel alone sometimes. What can I say? And we got 70% said, heck yeah. 30% said, not really. And luckily, no one on UFO Twitter said, rover what? Thank goodness. We're very upset with you if you are in the hashtag UFO Twitter community and your response is UFO what? Or Twitter rover what? We just don't want that. Okay. And so then we have that poll. And then I also took a second poll because this was just like we were saying, this question I have, it's kind of just been driving me a little bonkers. And it's not that one. And that question that I had is in regards to the Perseverance landing. So this is all related. Because I think as we accept, and it's also happenstance to me that this all happens in 180 days. So they tell us there's life in the Venusian clouds, possibly. And now we're hearing that ancient life might be on. It's just, you want to talk about slow disclosure. It's happening. But scientists are saying they want to find a fossil. As of yesterday, scientists are actively on the surface of Mars looking for ancient life. It's strange to me, but it seems like this doesn't register for people that if it's a possibility next door and you use the Drake's equation, obviously there are entities like us who are just as smart. So that is interesting. So I'm going to show you guys this other poll that I took. And it was this one, which is, since it was brought up by many mainstream media, the rover was looking for ancient life, and it was. CNBC, ABC, they all made a reference to searching for ancient life. And it seems, society seems unmoved. And then I wrote, I'm a biased sci-fi girl. Hashtag UFO Twitter. So my question to them, since the rover landing today, does ET life somehow seem more accepted since we are searching for evidence of life, of any life form outside of Earth? Let me say that again. Since the rover landing today, does ET life somehow seem more accepted since we are searching for evidence of any life form outside of Earth? And we had 33% said totally, 11% said no, but 56 said sort of, which, and I like doing the sort ofs in polls. So you got 55 plus 33 equals 88. So 88% of people on UFO Twitter believe on some level, that this is creating a more accepted thought process as we search for evidence of any life form outside the Earth. But that's obviously just the UFO community. We're kind of biased. So there's also that, which I thought was just so cool and so special. So that is the question. Are aliens more accepted now? I don't know, because we've got Elon, who's all of a sudden pretending like none of this exists. But I think we could explain it a little bit more now that we look at, we talked about what happened when he smoked a joint on Joe Rogan. He was totally, I'm not surprised he said nothing about UFOs. I really, like, I'm sure they didn't even want him to go back on the Joe Rogan show, but who's they, right? Like, he's the boss, you know, Elon's the boss. No one's going to tell him, you can't go on the Joe Rogan. He goes where he wants. He does what he wants. And also just his perspectives alone, when they ask him about aliens, he totally doesn't want to talk about it at all. I've never heard and I love Elon Musk. I've watched him talk about really great stuff about the government being just another corporation we buy into. He's got some strong libertarian beliefs. I really enjoy listening to him talk, and I've seen a lot of his talks. And I guess when it comes to him, he does exactly what he wants. And so the aliens, and not talking about them, he's got his focus, he's got his vision. That's how he's been so successful. And if there's one thing, you know, that we all learn, it's what you focus on is what grows. So why focus on aliens when you're building spaceships to go to Mars, and also trying to like gather funding to that and everything like that? It's just, you want to get Tesla stock, you want to get SpaceX stock. He has tons of different businesses that almost were completely destroyed, not to mention that he's moving Tesla from California all the way to Texas because he said that because of the new tax system in California, Elon Musk says he's not going to make money off of Tesla, and
he's not voting Democrat anymore.
He stays in California because of how much they're being taxed. So because of that, he's moving to Texas so that he can actually keep his SpaceX. He's moving SpaceX, and now he's moving Tesla. He's moving both of his companies from California to Texas because he says his company can't survive because of the amount of taxes that they would put onto them. So he's moving. So, I mean, it's difficult to run a business. He's got to focus on what he's got to focus on. He's got to do what he's got to do, you know, just like we all have got to do. And he's not a ufologist. We never asked him to be. And he's also, I hear all these conversations about him being like, almost like he's a politician, and he's not. Elon Musk, he's not a president, a politician. He's not a philosopher. He's an engineer. And he's also not, he doesn't even consider himself a businessman. He considers himself an engineer who creates things and builds things. And that's what he works on. So very interesting stuff. So we've got so many things that have been going on. And like we said, you know, it's interesting, the ridicule, the denial, the things that people just go through to try to get it out, you know. It's a lot. It's a lot. So once again, guys, I'm super excited to be reporting here and sharing what I think is going on every week here at UFO Man, coolest channel in the world. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and also share it with hashtag UFO Twitter so that we can get the truth out. And remember, guys, no matter what anybody tells you, you know what's going on. All right, guys, check out my channel. Go over, check it out. It's Alien Girl 111. You can go check it out. And I'm going to be doing my regular TGI UFOs that happen every Friday night. And you guys can jump on, say hi. We've got an awesome community. It's one of the smaller channels, which I love. I love it when we're small. When I'm a UFO live chat fan person, you've probably, you know, I'm there. So we've got a fun community that comes and talks, and it's small, and we all know each other. So swing by if you ever get the chance. And like I said, subscribe to UFO Man team #1. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time with more information about what I think's going on and what we think's going on. And remember, speak the truth, be the truth, do the truth. You've got this. See you guys next time. Peace.
I'm no longer on Twitter, folks. I exercised free speech once, and
Yeah. I'm just on it for the UFO community. That's it. I'm there to go ahead and communicate because this is the only place where you can get all the different ufologists to come together. And I'm not there for politics or anything else, or sports or you know what. It's just UFOs.
Tim, you're
muted.
Done that twice now. Well, anyways, yeah, I'm on Twitter for just the UFO information and communication between ufologists and just normal everyday people that film something. I'm also on there to advertise our live streams so that new visitors can come to our streams and get the information that we have to provide. Well, our next segment tonight is going to be featured by Tommy Highway, and it's going to be covering 2 major abduction scenarios, and I know he wants to mention a third. So, Tommy, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Tim. I appreciate it, folks. Sorry for the state of my studio right now. I'm actually expecting new furniture tomorrow, so I had to tear everything down and get everything out of the way and all that good stuff. So that's why you're staring at the wall behind me. Now, folks, let's talk about something that is very controversial. Let's talk about a subject in ufology that really nobody really wants to talk about. And I suspect is one of the reasons that the government wants to keep a lid on this. We're talking about alien abduction, folks. Okay. Now, there are all kinds of stories about alien abduction, and some of it's believable, some of it's plausible, some of it's absolutely not. I like to consider myself a bit of a skeptic because I am a bona fide experiencer. So anything that I hear from the ufology community, to be honest with you, I'm going to have to take that with not a grain of salt, but I'm going to have to take it with a bit of, let's just say, speculation, something like that. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the more famous cases of UFO abductions. And there are several ones that actually have substance and believability to them. Excuse me. Let's go right off the bat. We're going to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill story. And let me go ahead and, Tim, I'm going to share my screen with you, sir. There we go. Okay. Let's go to Betty and Barney Hill. Now, this is one of the very
Hold on a second. I'll add it. Okay, there you go.
Okay, great. Betty and Barney Hill are very interesting people. Number one, they're some of the very first Americans that actually came out and essentially admitted to alien abduction. And as you can see it by the photo, they're also very unique in that they're an interracial couple, and especially back in those days, this was a big thing, 60s, 70s. I mean, you know, they weren't, how can I say, they weren't out there to stick themselves into the limelight. Okay. That's not what they were doing. Now, I'm sure that in fact, they were probably trying to stay as normal and under wraps as possible because, you know, the racial things of the time and whatnot. But Betty and Barney Hill were an American couple who claimed that they were abducted by extraterrestrials in a rural portion of the state of New Hampshire from September 19th to 20th in 1961. Now, think about that. 61. This is 9 years before I was even born, for goodness sakes. It was the first widely publicized report of an alien abduction in the United States. So these folks were essentially the first ones that came out and said, hey, something weird happened to us. We're trying to figure out what it was. So they went through all the processes, at least processes at the time. We're talking hypnosis and those kinds of things. Now, I'll tell you, I don't have the audio of any of the hypnosis sessions, but I'll tell you, folks, you should go out there, look on YouTube and watch those because both of them sound incredibly believable. But if you listen to Barney Hill, there's terror in that man's voice. I mean, he's obviously experiencing something, and hypnosis brought it to light. And there's no doubt in my mind that these two folks right here were not trying to seek the limelight because of obvious reasons. No, what they wanted to do was convey the message and convey their story to us, the public, and say, hey, listen, this happened to us. They were brave people, very brave people. Now, obviously, they're both deceased for many years now, but there are definitely videos you can go out to on YouTube and whatnot, and you can watch actual interviews with these folks. You can see the hypnotic sessions, the whole 9 yards. Absolutely worth doing, folks. I believe these people. I believe that they had an experience with something exotic. Let's go there. Exotic. I don't believe it was government. I don't believe it was, the Sandinistas or whatever. I don't believe it was any of those people. I believe that these people were abducted by aliens. And it's actually ironic because Betty Hill drew a photo of a star map. This is back in the 60s, okay? And this is where they say they were from, that the aliens told them where they were from, showed her a star map of their system. She was able to actually draw that in pencil, crayon, or whatever. But the irony of the whole thing is the fact that we didn't even know those stars existed back then. It was many, in fact, I think it was more than a decade later that we discovered that this system that she's actually drew this map of exists. And by golly, it looks just like the map that she drew. Interesting, isn't it? Now let's go ahead and go on. Let's go to the mid-70s. Travis Walton. Many of you know Travis Walton as the lumberjack that was out there with a crew of lumberjacks, and they ran in. Basically, they were driving off the job site, going home for the day or the evening or whatever, and they ran into a UFO. Now, Travis Walton, reportedly, and I do believe this guy gets out of the truck that they were in and walks up toward this object, while the rest of the guys are staying in the truck in fear, which I completely understand that. So, as he walks up to this object, it basically, for lack of a better term, zaps him, okay? Knocks him down. And the guys in the truck were so scared that they sped off. Again, under the circumstances, kind of hard to blame them. But here's the thing about this. Being a child of the 70s, and I was born in 1970, I remember this story. I remember it very well. I remember it was actually a big news story, at least on the airwaves. I'm talking about FM radio. Now, I grew up in Cincinnati, and I remember a Cincinnati DJ, I believe it was Q102, if I'm not mistaken, back in the day. He was making fun of Travis Walton. I mean, while the guy was still gone. I mean, he wasn't even, the story just came out. This guy they're putting all kinds of sound effects to the story and all that, making a big joke out of it. This man's missing, okay? This man was missing for several days before finally he showed up naked, according to all stories, and he was in a gas station, a closed down gas station that had been closed for the evening. He called his friends to come and pick him up. So they came and picked him up. UFO experts interviewed him. He was polygraphed several times, as was the entire group of people that witnessed this were polygraphed. Now, the only one person that failed it, and it wasn't even a fail, it was an inconclusive, was just one of the guys that happened to be there. He took another polygraph later and passed it with flying colors. I mean, if you think about it, if you're strapped to a polygraph chair and you're being asked about something that's, for lack of a better way to put it, supernatural, so to speak, I can understand how somebody could be an inconclusive, but there were absolutely no nobody that was actually judged to be lying about the story of, I think, 6 men, I believe it was 5 or 6 men. They were all telling the truth.
There was one that was thought to be suspicious, but that's because he had bad feelings toward the guy that went missing,
Travis Walton. Yeah, that's correct. And then after he took the second test, then he passed it anyway. Right. So, I mean, this happened. This event happened. Travis Walton, folks, I'm here to tell you, this man was abducted for whatever reason by UFOs. Now, as Travis Walton tells it later in life, he believes it's the fact that he was actually, as they were moving away, the UFO was moving away, the craft, I should say, he was hit with some kind of a pulse of energy, which, you know, damaged his body. And then they stopped, picked him up, and repaired him. That's what he thinks is happening now. But it's very interesting that, I mean, all those people, all those men saw that. They all passed a polygraph, and they have no reason to lie. These guys are lumberjack country bumpkins from nowhere, okay?
Snowflake, Arizona.
Exactly. You ever heard of Snowflake, Arizona? Me neither. And you wouldn't have if this had not happened. So it's very interesting. Now, let's go ahead and move right on along, and we're going to go to Lewis Whitney Strieber. Lewis Whitney Strieber is sort of a more modern day experiencer. Now, Mr. Strieber is an author. Okay, he actually has written several books. We're talking about the Wolfen, The Hunger, and Communion. Communion is the book in which he details his experience as an abductee. Okay, now I know a lot about this. I've been watching this for 30 years at least. Okay, this guy. Communion's a great book. There's also a movie out there if you would like to go out and rent it, and I highly recommend that you do. It's a great flick, okay? But what it does is it kind of details this guy's experiences. Now, Mr. Strieber began to have all kinds of missing time and different things happening around his house. At the time, Mr. Strieber was actually out of work. His marriage is on the rocks, as I understand it, and he didn't have a lot going for him. In fact, he was about to lose the cabin that he lived in. However, while he lived in this cabin, he began to have these strange experiences, missing time, things of that nature, as I said before. And at some point, he was even having some medical difficulties. So he went and saw a doctor, specifically a proctologist. Okay, now I know, don't laugh, but it's true. He had some apparently rectal issues or whatnot. So he goes to his proctologist. Proctologist does an examination, and he says, well, listen, when were you raped? And Mr. Strieber said, well, what do you mean? I've never been raped. I don't know what you're talking about. He says, well, you know, and not to be gross, folks, but to be, you know, factual about this, he says that his rectum is misshapen or whatever. It looks like he has been a victim of rape. Now, ironically, one of the things that Mr. Strieber reported was that the aliens were, in fact, and again, don't laugh, but they were examining his rectum. Okay. So he's got that going on. So he actually has physical evidence on his body, right? That something extraordinary happened that he does not remember. Because, I mean, let's be honest, if someone's sticking something up your, you know, you're going to know that, okay? In a normal setting, everybody's going to realize and recognize that. He didn't remember this happening, yet his rectum shows signs of trauma, let's say, okay? So Mr. Strieber wrote a book about his experiences. And again, the movie is fantastic. I hear the movie is a little bit more, I don't know, dramatized than the book or whatever, which, you know, it's Hollywood for you. But again, whether you read the book, whether you actually see the movie, I highly recommend it because this guy is absolutely believable. And again, he's one of these people that he has no reason to lie. And he has the unique perspective of having some form of physical evidence that he has in fact been abducted or molested in some way that he does not remember. Tim, what are your thoughts?
He is still continuing with his UFO research. He has a podcast online called Whitley Strieber, and I can honestly say that he just like Travis Walton and Betty and Barney Hill when they were both alive, and Whitley, Strieber, all three of them passed every polygraph test ever given to them. And their story never changed. It always stayed the same, except for Travis Walton making a change in his story because it's his opinion. It's not what happened, because what happened was different. But he was making an opinion.
Strictly theory.
Strictly theory. So what I'm going to say is Tommy provided all the information you really need for those three abductions. We wanted to touch briefly on the subject because it is not talked about in ufology, and it is almost shunned.
It's a taboo, no doubt about it. It's a total taboo. Whether you're the garbage man, whether you're the milkman, or whether you're an engineer or a political figure, it's a taboo. If this happened to you, you can't talk about it. You just can't.
Right. And considering in 1955 at Muroc Air Force Base, the president made an agreement with a group of aliens to allow alien abductions of humans on planet Earth for exchange of technology and information. So if that's the case, and that's actually happening, that gives credence to the fact that abductions are real.
Yeah, if I could just say something on this. Stuff happened to me when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and it's nothing you ever ask for. It's something you talked about people, and people look at you and you think you're freaking crazy or you're making this stuff up. It's nothing we ever asked for, but it's something we carry through life with us. And anytime you go back and you bring back the memories of what happened, sometimes there's no emotion, but sometimes when you bring it in, it's just it's not the greatest, but it's something that, you know, by talking about it, by making other people understand and still trying to understand what the hell exactly happened and why. My late dad would say, it is what it is.
The two biggest things I take from alien abduction are this: they don't ask permission.
No.
Okay. They just come in and disrupt your life.
Yeah, but you go willingly. That's the problem.
That's because of mind control or whatever they're doing to control you. The other thing is a lot of experiencers, which is what people are referred to now, not abductees, find that they're living in fear constantly because they never know if they're going to come back.
Yeah.
And they can't control the abduction event.
If I could just touch on the fear part. I was driving to work one morning and I had turned the interior lights of my car to red, and I got to a stoplight and I looked down and my leg was up close against this panel, and I just had this freaking fear and just this image of just being completely in this small space, and all I could remember was that little red light that went down by my leg. Sometimes you get little flashbacks and stuff like this. You look back to that, it's like, where the hell did that come from? But you just have to, it's just another piece of the puzzle.
I had 3 UFOs shut my car down.
Yeah.
I drove that car for 12 years and 354,000 miles, and it never got shut down again.
Yeah.
Wow. And I had something happen where I got a mark. A mark left on my sternum, and it happened in 2009, and I have it to this day. It has not gone away, and a doctor said it was a vaccination, and I've never been vaccinated on my sternum. So
who gets vaccinated on their sternum? I mean, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Didn't you have something on your ear too?
Yeah, I had a couple marks on my ear that itched, and I had a doctor look at them, and he said, "You've had surgery on your ear recently." And I said, "No, I have not." He said, "It can't be. It's an impossibility. You have 2 suture marks, and they look like scalpel cuts." And I'm like, wow, because I had never had. And at one point, there seemed like there was something under the skin for a while, but it's not there anymore.
Right.
So I don't know what it was from, but Bob Gray in the chat says, UFO Man is branded. And Bob Gray also said, damn, UFO Man got taken. Well, I'm not sure if I was taken or not. Maybe they came into my house and did it. I don't know. But something happened. And I didn't see them. I don't have any waking memories of them, so I can't tell you for sure. But I do have marks. I even have photographs of bruises on my legs. It looks like 3 fingerprints on my left leg and 3 on my right. And that is an indication of references to alien beings that only have 3 fingers. So think about that. And they were impact bruises. So they were really deep and yellowish purple. So they had to have been applying a lot of strength to hold me down for some reason. So, yeah, something happened. I don't know. Anyways, we want to take last comments from the panel. Tommy?
Folks, appreciate everybody for coming out. As always, thank you so much for the love. We really appreciate that. I know Tim and Thomas do as well. Thank you very much for coming out. I think we had a great show tonight. Tim, as always, you're the master. And Thomas, thank you for your contributions. As always, you are the man. Folks, thanks a lot.
Thomas?
All right. Thanks, Tim. And thanks, Tommy. I appreciate us all coming together and being able to take this time and, spread the word about ufology and different, pieces of information that we may have forgotten about along the way, but also being able to hit, current, events and just trying to talk about what's the thumbbeat, what's the pulse, if you would call it, of ufology and talk about it as a group.
Where are we now?
Yeah,
right. Where are we now? Where are we going? Where are we headed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are we really going to rely? And one last comment from me is: are we really going to rely on government disclosure? I mean, come on. How many times has your government lied to you?
We can't rely on government toilet paper, much less disclosure. Come on.
So what I'm going to say is, to have disclosure, we need to continue doing live streams. We need to continue doing videos on YouTube, videos on Rumble, videos anywhere you can post them, so we can get the news out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that it is a grassroots movement. And that's what we're here trying to do on UFO Man. And by the way, check out the hat. This is our logo. Turned out pretty good. They're available on UFO Man. In the summary, you can find the store links.
If I may, real quick, folks, disclosure is a puzzle. And every time that we all get together, and we've said this before, every time that we all get together here, we all add more pieces to that puzzle. And pretty soon, at some point, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
Right. And with the help of Tommy Highway and Thomas FESSLER and Alien Girl 111, we are most definitely going to do our best to find these things out and present them for you on a weekly basis. So until next time.